Any True Blood fans out there must already be acquainted with Russell Edgington, aka the series' undisputed Vampire King. While he made his debut on the show's third season, it did not take him long to win over the audience. But casual viewers don't know much about his origin, or how he got around to being such a major antagonist, despite only appearing in a couple of seasons. Portrayed by Denis O'Hare, Russell Edgington stirred up a whole lot of trouble in the series. And today, we will explore his character arc and tell you all about this Vampire King who casually ripped out his victim's spine. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin.
We are nothing.
Who is Russell Edgington in True Blood? Born around 850 years before the birth of Christ, Russell's origins can be traced to the Celtic community of pagan druids who resided in the Carpathian Mountain. Upon his birth, the druids named him Corin, which roughly translates to raven in ancient Celtic. However, this is all we know about his early life, and there is no evidence of what he did until he transformed into a vampire mid-life. In fact, we don't even know who turned him into a vampire. And he spent most of his post-transformation years traveling across the globe. He studied the legends of Daywalking and almost found himself in the thick of things during Julius Caesar's Gallic Wars, before heading to Judea, province, and Rome. However, he was forced to run away after the Jewish uprising, and he allegedly even met Jesus and labeled him as a dirty hippie. Since he was a pagan, Russell dedicated his life towards respecting nature and studying the power of the elements that drove the world. In fact, he found himself so connected to the natural laws of Earth that he despised humanity for being so destructive towards the environment. To deal with this, he allied with a pack of werewolves and even offered them his blood in exchange for their services as mercenary. This kick-started a shadow war against humanity, wherein these werewolves destroyed innumerable civilizations, eradicated the Aztec, orchestrated Constantinople's fall, and eventually focused on the Vikings in Sweden. When Russell was traveling across a Viking community in the winter of 900 AD, he met their leader, Ulfric Northman, and asked for a few of their goats to feed the werewolves. However, Ulfric was enraged by this proposition, and Russell then took his leave, only to return at night with the werewolves to kill the entire Northman family. He even took Ulfric's crown as he left, unaware of the fact that Ulfric's son Eric had survived the massacre and that he would hunt him down for the rest of his life. A few years down the line, the Roman Empire was on the verge of destruction when Russell met Talbot, Angelus, in Byzantium. He immediately fell for him and eventually turned him into a vampire when he was mortally wounded on the battlefield. As the years passed, Russell came across great personalities, such as William Shakespeare and the Nazis during World War II, and he even offered his werewolves to the Nazis. While he viewed Hitler as a little fool, he was impressed by his theory of a master race and was pleased to learn that the human population was dwindling due to his efforts. Around this time, a newly transformed Eric Northman tracked him down in Augsburg, Germany, and even killed one of his wolves with some help from his maker, Godric. However, Russell managed to evade him, and Eric could not avenge the Northman family, making it clear that Russell was far too strong to be killed, even by other vampires. What is Russell Edgington's personality like? While Russell seems to have a polite, charming exterior, this was merely a facade that shielded his true, manipulative nature. He made elaborate plans to defeat his opponents and seized any opportunity that benefited him without any regard for those around him. Russell barely worried himself with ethics or rules, and his bloodlust overpowered all other emotion, especially when it came to human. He was quite aggressive, and he believed that all non-vampires were beneath him. But at the same time, he had a completely different personality when it came to his lover. He went out of his way to take care of them, and he nearly descended into insanity after Talbot's death. He would often speak to an urn that contained Talbot's ashes, and he went on a rampage to kill anyone who might have played a part in his death, including the Authority and the American Vampire League. What powers does Russell Edgington have? Since he had been around for centuries, Russell was the strongest and most experienced vampire in the entire world. He had immense speed, and he could apply this speed to injure others, such as the time he chained Jorge Alonso de San Diego's body to a table, and even ripped a man's spine out of his body. Feats like this immortalized his name among other vampires, and he also had the ability to fly. Only a couple of vampires, such as Lilith or Macklin Warlow, could outclass him, while all other vampires in the saga paled in comparison.
You better hope you are not around when I...
Why did Russell kill the Magister and attack the AVL? In some of his earliest appearances in Season 3, Russell got involved in the rum trade and traveled to America during Prohibition. He soon settled in Mississippi and even adopted a local identity as Russell Edgington before declaring himself the vampire king of the state. Over the next few decades, he did odd jobs, such as becoming an antique dealer when he came across a vampire named William Compton, and eventually started eyeing the state of Louisiana. He hoped to expand his kingdom and sought out Queen Sophie Anne of Louisiana to peacefully negotiate an agreement. However, Sophie Anne rejected his offer, and Russell then sent his werewolf to kidnap her procurer, Bill Compton. With Cooter leading the pack, they botched the abduction, but things played out smoothly after all, as Bill came face to face with Russell in his kingdom. When Russell found out that his wolves had mistreated Bill, he shot one of them in cold blood before escorting Bill back to his mansion. Even though Russell was already involved with Talbot, most of his story arc this season revolved around his attempts to marry Sophie Anne to acquire her estate. He caged her to ensure she did not escape before freeing Pam from the Magister at Fantasia. As things progressed smoothly, Russell was determined to get the Magister to oversee their marriage, even when the Magister told him that the authority would never recognize it as a legitimate affair. Frustrated over how things were progressing, Russell ended up killing the Magister in front of Sophie Anne, Eric, and Pam to send a message before returning to his Mississippi manor. When Russell asked Sophie Anne to move in with him, Talbot expressed his frustration over things and eventually stormed off when Eric interrupted them to inform them about Debbie Pelt's arrival. While Russell went to his study to talk to her, he learned that Cooter was dead, and he sent Debbie to hunt Sookie down. However, Eric seemed to disapprove of this plan, and Russell then questioned his loyalty when Eric declared that he had spent 1,000 years looking for a leader like him and that he would never dare to be disloyal. While things moved smoothly on the work front, Russell's personal life was in chaos as Talbot fought with him again and even broke a few precious antiques. As Talbot reached out for the Northman family crown, Eric rushed to save him and even reassured Talbot. Even though Russell pretended to be enraged at Eric's interference, he soon declared that he had to go after Sookie, and he even expressed his gratitude towards Eric for subduing Talbot. However, he was unaware of the fact that Eric had ulterior motives, and he even initiated a sexual encounter with Talbot behind his back. Soon enough, Eric revealed his true identity as the sole survivor of the Northman family and proceeded to kill Talbot. While Eric was finally satisfied after killing someone so close to Russell, our vampire king sensed Talbot's death all the way in Bon Temps and immediately rushed back. As he entered the manor, he stumbled upon his dead lover's remains and mourned his death. When he realized that the Northman family crown was missing, he connected the dots and realized that Eric was Ulfric Northman's son, and he even swore vengeance upon him. He was at Fantasia with Talbot's remains in a glass urn when he observed Nan Flanagan and the AVL guards and concluded that Nan was protecting Eric all this time. He then looked down at the urn in his hand and swore to make them all suffer before leaving Fantasia and arriving at TBBN News Network Studio.
We will eat you after we eat your children.
What happens in Russell's iconic news monologue? As soon as Russell entered the studio, he lunged at Jerry McCafferty and ripped his spine out in a shocking display of his powers. He then proceeded to hold the spine as a trophy as they went on air, and he directly addressed humans in a long monologue that revealed the true nature of the AVL, aka the American Vampire League. He started by warning humans against turning their TVs off, before highlighting how quickly he managed to injure McCafferty's spine right before their eyes. He then introduced himself as a vampire who had been around for 3,000 years, before discussing the AVL's intentions to convince humanity that they are alike. Russell stated that they might be similar in their narcissism and selfish nature, before calling humans out on issues such as global warming, war, and genocide, and even going as far as to refer to them as spineless creatures. However, he pointed out that there was a vast difference between humans and vampires, as vampires drank true blood and nourished themselves at the cost of human lives, even if the AVL tried their best to conceal this information from them. After establishing that humans were not equal to vampires in any way, he proceeded to kill McCafferty on screen before taking his leave. This led to an immediate rise in hate crime and anti-vampire sentiments among the public, while the AVL's spokesperson, Nan Flanagan, publicly labeled Russell as an extremist and terrorist. They tried to paint him as a madman who was not a true representation of the vampire cause, and Eric even blamed Eric for Russell's psychotic break.
It's glorious. It's sublime.
How did Eric betray and bury Russell in concrete? Within the next 2 days, Russell quickly cleared out his entire mansion and moved out after hiring a male prostitute. In fact, his grief convinced him that the man in front of him was Talbot, and he started apologizing to him for trusting Eric. He then feels relieved over the fact that he could bid Talbot goodbye and he then diverted his attention towards drinking Suki's blood. This act finally enabled him to turn into a daywalker, and he stepped outside in the sunlight to discover that Eric had also done the same thing. He even handcuffed himself to Russell while they stood under the sun and burned together. After the blood's effect started wearing off, since this was only a temporary effect, Eric used Russell's grief to trap him when he did not see it coming, and then declared that they would die together. As they talked to one another, Russell revealed that he had killed his family because his father refused to hand over 2 of his goats for his wolves, while Suki rushed outside to save Eric. However, she was quite surprised when Eric asked her to save Russell as well, and it turned out that he had a vision from Godric that asked him to spare Russell. Unfortunately, Eric and Bill proceeded to bury him alive in cement, declaring that he would remain alive and think about all that he had lost for centuries to come, while they lied to Suki about having killed him. As his last words, Russell promised to make them regret this once he was back, and this was the last of his appearances in Season 3 before he reappeared in Season 5.
Russell Edgington.
How and why was Russell resurrected in Season 5? In an episode titled Turn, 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 Alcide discovered that Russell had escaped from his cemented prison and immediately rushed to inform Suki. Since she had no idea that he was still alive, she was worried for his safety, as Russell was bound to return for her blood, and Alice then promised to protect her. However, Suki declared that she must take care of the situation herself, and she then contacted Eric, while the scene shifted to a dodgy building. While someone dragged a dead body through the building's corridor, we get a glimpse of a starving Russell who had recruited someone to do his bidding and feed him corpses in order to satiate his hunger and bloodlust. In another episode, Bill and Eric are arrested by the authority, who demand to know the truth about Russell. Their guardian, Roman Zimowich, then offers to hunt and capture Russell in exchange for some freedom. While Russell continues to build his strength in the shadows of the abandoned building, Zimowich proceeds to tell the others about Russell's heinous acts in the past, and even appoints Steve Newland as their spin doctor, in case Russell returned to tamper with the vampire rights movement. Soon enough, Eric and Bill were handed eye stakes and sent away to track Russell down, while Kibwa Akinjai suggested that he just might not be alive. Dieter Braun and Rosalind Harris also agree, and they all believe that this was just a huge plot to spread fear and delay the passing of the global vampire rights bill. In the meantime, Bill and Eric ask Suki to use her telepathy to track Russell down and even enlist one of Hervo Construction's employees, named Doug, who had been a witness to his escape. Suki used her telepathy to learn that Russell was rescued by a female vampire who represented Lilith, and that she was a chancellor of the authority. She then dug deeper through Doug's memories and tracked Russell down to the abandoned asylum building. All this time had allowed Russell to heal completely, and he casually greeted them and joked about the noise they had made while looking for him all over the place. In fact, his wolves also reappeared by his side and even distracted Bill, Alcide, and Eric while Russell tried to get closer to Suki, even though they all had different plans. Kibwa arrived at the scene with V-Feds, who arranged for an eye stake to get rid of him forever, while Russell called the authority out for their hypocrisy and even targeted the Sanguinistas as cowards. The eye stake malfunctioned and gave him enough time to overpower everyone around him. He started by killing Roman and even staking him before going after Eric, and the two bared their fangs at one another while the lights went off. The AVL guards took this opportunity to capture Russell with a silver net, while Eric and Bill wondered how things malfunctioned to such an extent that Russell managed to kill Roman before being taken into custody. They soon find themselves in a meeting with Nora and Salome, but Eric feels quite betrayed and refuses to talk to them. Suddenly, Russell appears in front of him and declares that he has been reborn, while Nora interjects and tells Eric that he was just trying to warn him all along. Salome then revealed that she rescued him from his cemented prison, since he was the only vampire powerful enough to kill Roman. While Eric and Bill seem enraged over the fact that they went behind their backs, Nora highlights this as a chance for all of them to share powers, and even invites them to a ceremony. When Russell addresses the crowd at the ceremony, he declared that he never meant to disrespect Lilith, while Nora suggested that they must all drink from Lilith's blood. When Chancellor Dieter proclaimed that this was blasphemy, Russell did not give him much time to make a speech and proceeded to decapitate him. He then apologized to Lilith, while everyone at the ceremony drank from her blood and ended up in a half-drunken state before finally going into a frenzy. In no time, they went from performing karaoke songs to killing everyone at the karaoke bar, and the chancellors then returned to the authorities' base to rethink their action. In the meantime, Salome was appointed Roman's successor, and the newly reconstructed authority devised plans to dismantle the mainstream movement. However, Russell did not seem to care much for it, and he spent most of his time flirting with Steve Newland and even taking a trip to Shreveport together. While Russell told him a bit about his werewolves, Steve observed the scene as they gathered around for a drop of his blood, and Russell then proceeded to grab Emma Garza from his pack and gift her to Steve as his first pet.
This is a crime against vampires! You have no right!
How did Russell defy the authority and go rogue while he already did not care much about Lilith's cause? He eventually rejected her worship outright and went back to his old ways. After Molly was sentenced to true death for working in cahoots with Eric, Russell was quite disinterested, and he stepped out to feed with Steve. After devouring a room full of humans, the duo started dancing to Teenage Dream when Russell told Steve about his intentions to turn into a Daywalker. Later, Russell and Kibwa find themselves in the authority's sanctum and watch Steve on the television when Eric walks in. To much surprise, Eric kneels in front of Russell and declares that he had forgiven him for murdering his family. He then confirmed his true faith in Lilith, and the Chancellors came together to come up with the plans to spread Lilith's words. At this point, Russell presented his plan to breed fairies and use their blood to be able to walk in the sun, while others immediately stated that the sun is forbidden. Salome especially resisted Russell's plans, and the two of them got into a physical altercation. Finally, Russell stirred up a big scene by walking to the table's top and declaring that the vampire religion is beneath him. He then talked about his wishes to walk in the sun before promptly leaving the authorities' base.
Fuck you!
Why did Russell want to daywalk using fairy blood? At the end of the day, Russell's obsession with daywalking continued to rule over his psyche, and he traveled to Bon Temps with Steve Newland to find a solution. They tracked down Jason Stackhouse and convinced him to take them to Sookie, and it was not long before they arrived at Hot Wing. Even though Russell could sense the fairy's presence, he could not see them, and he threatened to kill Jason when the fairy elder finally revealed herself. She immediately attacked Steve Newland, and an enraged Russell then attacked her and drained her of her blood. This act blessed him with a horde of powers, and he proceeded to use them against the rest of the fairies. How does Russell Edgington die in True Blood? As the fairy's elder blood coursed through Russell's veins, he felt a little high and then started boasting to them. His overconfidence got the better of him, and he did not realize it when Eric Northman crept up on him and staked him. While bright light coursed through his body at first, Russell thought the fairy blood might help him survive. However, his delusions were shattered when the light started fading, and his body soon started decomposing. In his last moments, he started wondering about the meaning of true death before embracing his destiny, while Eric finally triumphed over him after seeking revenge for centuries.
Level 1 protocol!
You and me, together.
Marvelous verdict. And with that, we have explored the mighty Russell Edgington story arc, right from his initial birth and transformation to his eventual resurrection. There is no doubt that he had a tumultuous life across the 2 seasons that he appeared in, but he certainly made a lasting impact and immortalized himself as a villain. He remains an integral part of the True Blood legacy as the vampire who once ripped out someone's spine on live television, and we hope you enjoyed exploring his journey with us. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks, everyone.